Welcome, everybody, to an Ardwulf Lair special presentation. Joining us this evening is our very special guest, Mr. Frank Davis. Frank, how's it going tonight?
Hi, Gary. I'm pretty good. I had a bloody nose this morning, and I've got a whole catalog of minor medical issues, but I'm still going, like that. Anyhow, thank you for inviting me on to be on your show. I just thought I would just tell people how we met and how long it's taken to get to this point. We met 2 or 3 years ago. I went to my first Compass Expo and all. And I went because I had been out of wargaming for 40 years, and I was thinking of designing a new game. And I had already contacted John Prince, who had passed along my information to Bill Thomas, and Bill called me, and Bill said, great, come on down, like that, let's talk, and all. And I said, okay, who's gonna pay the admission for a Compass Expo? So right away, Bill and I got off to a bad start, and all like that. But anyhow, shortly after I arrived there that first night, I went into the, I guess I had been watching your show once or twice before that. And I got into the elevator and you were there, and I think I said hi, Gary, or something like that. And then a little later that day, I gave a presentation. I think this is the sequence. I gave a presentation on Divine Wind, which was the game I was talking to Compass about. And you were in the audience for some of that. And then after that, I got in the elevator and I met you there again. And I started a conversation by saying, I've really been impressed by how much you know about SPI, that I had actually worked there for 6 years, and I didn't feel as well informed as you are. So, and you said, well, I know a little about you and all like that, and I know you worked at both SPI and Avalon Hill. And I said, and you said something like, from what I just heard, I think it would be great to have you on the show. I think I could do a whole 2-hour show just with you talking about the old days at SPI. And my response was, Gary, I don't really think that would be a good idea. I said, I have very controversial ideas about war games, and I don't think too many people like it all like that are that interested in hearing my point of view. And so basically over the years we stayed in touch, but I said, we're not going to do a show. We did do a Ghost of SPI show as a result of that first meeting in the elevator. And then after that, I basically said to both you and Bill, I said, I'll get back in touch with you when I have something to say. And I disappeared off Bill's radar for several years, and I should explain that. I was working on Divine Wind, and it looked like it was ready to publish and all. But I was play testing it, and it had the typical problems of Pacific games in that even though it was a much more tight kind of design than some of the earlier designs, it still got to the point where I felt it would take 13 hours or so to play it. And to play the campaign game, which is what I was interested in. I was interested in how the progress of the whole war and how the Japanese could adapt during that period and all. Of course, there would be different circumstances because the battles at the beginning of the war, which were so decisive, might have turned out differently and all. But I decided, well, this looks like it's going to take 12 or 13 hours, and that just doesn't cut it with me and all. And so I just said, I'm not publishing this. I'm going to continue to work on it. I'm going to back burner it, and I'm going to bring it back when I'm ready, So where am I going with this? What happened was, and all like that, about a year and a half ago, I started being interested in Divine Wind again, and I saw the same problems still before me. And all. I still don't think anyone has really solved the problem of how to do a playable Pacific War game that takes into account the whole war. And all. So I had this strange idea. I said, well, let me design some other games and see how I can make them simpler and easier, shorter in duration. And then maybe I can apply some of that new technology to my problems with Divine Wind. And as a result of that, I've been working on a whole series of games, which I recently talked to Bill Thomas about again, and he was very interested. Mo was there, and anyhow, they were very interested. Well, Bill is interested in anything, and Bill is willing to publish most everything. And Bill says that he has no price barriers. That if people are interested in the topic, they're willing to pay the going rate, like that. But if you know Compass' recent history, he's been putting out some esoteric titles. So what he said to me, I showed him like the artwork for 8 different designs, and I have the rules for like one of them, and I'm partially through the rules with the second one, like that. And he liked all the concepts, but he said, well, which 2 are furthest along? And I said, Desert War, which is a remake of Africa Corps, Avalon Hill's Africa Corps, and Mountain War, which is a remake of Anzio and all. And he said, he said, I don't know if there's that many people who are interested in the Italian front or the desert front. And I agree with him. But I also feel a lot of people aren't interested in some of the titles he's been publishing. And he didn't say this, and I shouldn't put words in his mouth, but I got the feeling that he had run into problems like where if people weren't that fascinated by the title, then it would be difficult to move the quantity that he wanted to sell like that. So he came back right in person that day and he said, would you consider bundling those 2 games together, like Mountain War and Desert War? And I said, you mean like War Across the Med and all like that? And he said, yes. He said, I think if we bundle them together, we can stimulate more interest in the audience, and all like that, and we can sell it at a price that we might not be able to sell it if we sell each title individually. Plus, this is again ex camera and all. Plus, it could save him an inventory and printing costs, by bundling 2 games together. Similar to the quad games, and similar to other companies I see that are starting to dip their toes into the idea. I think that it wasn't a Compass that did battles of campaigns of World War II, and it was 3 games together and all.
Plus Brief Border Wars, they had already done at that point.
Okay.
By Brian Train.
Okay. Oh, well, is that different? Is that different wars, or are they basically in the same?
Those are all different small conflicts that there have been relatively few games about. Okay. Like the little scuffle between the Chinese and the Vietnamese, for example.
Okay, so basically, Bill liked the games and the design and the work I've done and all like that. And his idea was I think I can be more successful marketing these if we can bundle them 2 at a time and all. And I have no reservations about that. To me, each game gets its own design effort and all like that, and how it's marketed and all. Anything that's going to, broaden the appeal, I'm in favor of all like that. So he and I agreed and all, and I said I had 8 games, so it came out to 4 bundles. And we'll look at each of these bundles later and all like that. But basically, it came out to 4 bundles with 2 games in each bundle. One is War Across the Med, which is Desert War and Mountain War, Italy and North Africa. The second one is Europe, Eastern Front and Western Front, called War Across Europe and all like that. The third one is back to the Pacific for me. And incidentally, these are slotted in terms of the difficulty for me and all. They're in the pipeline, they're all being worked on, but in terms of release, they're slotted in terms of difficulty for me. The third one I've been interested in, this will come up shortly. I was always interested in an early design by Jim Dunnigan called Solomon's campaign, and I'll explain why as we get into another slide like in a while. But the two games in the Pacific Theater that are going to be bundled together is a remake of SPI Solomon's campaign and Divine Wind, which is not a remake of anything, but it's an attempt to make a playable game on the entire Pacific War, the naval side of that war, and the islands and all, but not mainland Asia. And the fourth bundle and all like that is the fourth bundle is another combination of a campaign and an overview, a strategic game. The fourth one is about the American Civil War. It's called War Across the States, and it has the whole Civil War in a game called Hallowed Ground, and it has a campaign operational level game called Confederate Campaigns, which basically are the Virginia campaigns of 62, 63, and 64. All of these, interestingly, use the same basic design architecture. I worked in the software industry during the object-oriented revolution and although the programmers were truly crazy and took forever to get anything done, their basic idea about widgets and using pieces that can be plugged into different games and operate in a similar fashion. So if you're going to have what I call campaign events, then it's like a drop-down list, and you can just change what goes in there based on the overall situation that you're simulating, and all like that. So we'll see an example of that later on, and all. But the architecture of widgets and the architecture of a graphic interface, which also I was in the software industry when the whole thing changed from character-based to Windows-based. And in the company I was working in, I was the one who introduced the mandate of going to a graphical user interface and all. And consequently, my games reflect a lot of similarities to how people would design war games for computers, but they're still manual games with physical components that have a more player agency than computer games, where you're basically watching something and making a few decisions and all, and then watching the results, like that and all. So anyhow, so back to the elevator. The elevator and all like that. It's taken me 3 or 4 years since that date. But when I realized, after I talked to Bill, I said, I want to talk to Gary again now and show him what I'm working on. And so let's talk about what I'm working on and how the whole project appears to me from my point of view and in my mind. So let's go to the first slide.
Here we go.
Okay. So I said that I have very unusual points of view about wargaming and about wargame design. I'm known for 2 things. I hate more games than Stigler and all, and I also am the slowest designer in history and all. And I'm kind of proud of both of those. But there's a lot of people say, "Oh, you're just a troublemaker. You're just someone who." An agitator who stirs up trouble when there is none and all like that. Well, in my mind, I know Jim Dunnigan from shortly before he made Jutland. And I know the way he made Jutland was he cursed out Avalon Hill. He told them they didn't know what the hell they were doing and all like that. And he wrote such a nasty and not just nasty, but information-laden criticism that they immediately invited him down to do their game, which turned out to be Jutland, which was not their most popular game, but hiring Dunnigan was probably the best thing Avalon Hill ever did and the best thing for the wargaming industry in general. So in addition to Dunnigan, there's a lot of designers like in all that I've either personally known or I've known by reputation or by communication, like in all like that. And most of them have had major influences on my life. The ones I've got pictured here all have died within the last, except for Charlie Roberts, they've all died within the last decade, like and all like that. Um, the three people across the top are Redmond Simonson, Irad Hardy, and Rich Berg, three of the most talented designers that SPI ever produced and all like that. I worked with each of these people. They taught me. I learned by listening to them. And they were all critical people too, and all like that. The second group is John Prados, Mark Ruggiero, who is more of a gamer than a designer. I don't know if he designed games too. And Mick Ewell, who was a designer at Avalon Hill who specialized in the Civil War. Mick Ewell, we lived in Baltimore, and Mick Ewell spent almost every weekend at some battlefield within 50 miles of Baltimore and all. He's kind of like one of the more obscure designers, but he designed like at least 4 games on Gettysburg and all like that. All those variants of Gettysburg that Avalon Hill produced in the 70s are Mick Ewell designs. The next 3 people, I'll start on the right side with Roger McGowan. In the 1980s or the 1990s, actually, it must have been around 1984 or 85, because that was when I stopped working in the war game field, and then I didn't come back for 40 years and all like that. I don't know where I put the word out, but like I wanted to sell off my collection, like many of us did, like all like that. And the person who immediately wanted to buy my collection was Roger McGowan and all. And I didn't really know too much about him, but he was like not established and all. He was running some kind of retail game selling store, like and all like that. And basically, he bought a couple of $1,000s worth of games. And I remember this very vividly because I had to pack all these games in a giant crate to send to California, which is where he lived. So most of the cost turned out to be the shipping cost and all like that. But he bought my whole collection in 1985 or so, like and all. I only kept certain games that I personally worked on, like and stuff like that and all. And Roger and I corresponded a couple of times, like and all. In the last year before he died, like many people in the industry, I got a letter from Roger out of the blue and all like that. And it basically said, I'm publishing this new book on my artwork for wargaming, and I want to give you a copy and all. And then he also sent me all these C3I magazines and everything, like and all. So what I want to say about Roger is Roger had a huge effect on all of us in terms of the look of war games and the look of graphic design for war games. And let's just spend a minute comparing and contrasting him with Redmond. Redmond was an information designer. Redmond was really, first of all, Redmond is the smartest person I worked with out of all my whole wargaming stuff and all. He was interesting in that he was extremely disciplined in terms of organizing information visually, but his office was one of the messiest offices I've ever been in, like and all like that. But Redmond's contribution, a lot of people nowadays say his artwork is not that great. It looks primitive. It's very, very limited by the technology of the day and all. And Redmond knew this. But what Redmond was working on that affected the hobby long term was how to organize the rules, how to organize information on the map, how to create symbology for different types of terrain and everything like that. He also played raid cards, all these things and all. And it's important to realize that he was the best at that information design, and his artwork was limited both by the fact that he was not a trained artist or illustrator, but also by the technology and the budget constraints of and the time constraints of working at SBI and all like that. The next two people you know better than me. Dean Essex, like and all like that, is an incredibly prolific designer and all like that. I'm not a fan of most of his designs because his designs are more detailed and take longer to play than my preference in wargaming, like and all like that. And Chad Jensen, I only know from John Butterfield. John Butterfield, I know that John Butterfield completed Chad's game on the Battle for Germany. I guess it's called Downfall, all like that. And then the last two people, Jack Green and Jack Green is of interest to me because he's a very early designer from the 70s when I started working and all. Charles Roberts is the most important, more important than Redmond and more important than Jim Dunnigan and all like that, because, he had this crazy idea that no one really understood, like it all like that, of trying to simulate history in a game that could be played on your kitchen table, like and all like that. The last person on the screen is the most interesting to me, but no one else knows him. This is my brother, Mike Davis. Mike was 5 years older than me, and he died in 2018. Mike was the first war game I ever played. I played against him, and he beat me, and all like that. But what Mike went on to do was he got first of all, he worked on Wall Street, and he was basically into options and compliance and all. But his work, nevertheless, was a lot of number-based work and all. He had graduated as an accountant and all like that, and he was much more facile with math than me and all. Anyhow, when he died, and this is going to lead into the rest of the story, when he died in 2018, I had to go down and clean out his condo in Florida and all. And when I went in there, like and all like that, his whole condo was filled with cabinets that were filled with books of baseball statistics and all. He had wanted to be a sports statistician, a professional sports statistician when he was young, and that didn't pan out. So what he did was he formed a fantasy baseball league on Wall Street, and it became the Wall Street Fantasy Baseball League. It was a pretty big league, and he became the commissioner. And the commissioner's job was basically to keep the statistics of every player in every game throughout the season, which would be used by managers, team managers, to evaluate draft buys of players and all. And then in a weird way, and I don't fully understand this, but in a weird way, the statistics of real players were applied to the games that were taking place in the fantasy leagues and all. So if Mickey Mantle hit a home run and Mickey Mantle was on your team, on that day in the fantasy league, Mickey Mantle would hit a home run in that game. And the results of what the players actually did throughout the season determined the actual scores of your games and led to who would win the pennant and eventually the series, like it was. Very, very number-based analysis and all. And he spent, I guess, about 20 years doing this. And his whole apartment, it was this weird feeling because I was there all by myself, like he had lived alone and all like that. And the whole place was just filled with hundreds of notebooks filled with baseball seasons. It would say 1980, 1984. It would be a whole notebook filled with statistics, like all like that. Anyhow, I put all these people together because there's a philosophical, important message to what I'm trying to convey here, which is every minute counts. And all these people loved what they do and all like that. But nevertheless, every minute counts. And well, even if you love it, maybe like those minutes can be even, maybe those minutes can be even better if you're willing to um, be open-minded about like your obsessions and your interests and all like that. And by open-minded, I mean if you want to play war games like and all like that, 20 hours a day, great. But you want to get the maximum satisfaction out of those 20 hours. You don't necessarily want to be rolling like, what they call low impact results, like you're disorganized or you're shaken or something like that at all. So that this became a very important thing to me when I realized like, we're all spending a large part of our lives doing this. Are we really doing justice to the games, and are we really getting our best bang for the buck? Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to try and go through this one a little faster. There's a couple of points I want to make. The first point I want to make, this is a picture taken in the 1970s at SPI's headquarters, and a couple of people I've given them call outs like and all like that. Basically, I want to talk about me and Dunnigan, like and all. Dunnigan and I, like, we're always at loggerheads, like and all like that. But I've come to admire him as much as anyone I've met in my life, like and all like that. The main thing that people have to understand right now and all about Jim Dunnigan is this. In 1971, when I started at SPI, Jim Dunnigan was the only person in the world designing war games. Whether you think he was a good designer, whether you think his games were lousy and all like that, just imagine if you're him and you're the only person doing this work, which means you don't have a lot of other people whose work you can look at and get ideas from and all like that. And you also don't have to, also, it's combined with this whole role of CEO of a company that's a publishing company that's got very tight budget constraints and very limited development time and all like that at all. But what impresses me most about Dunnigan was, one, his approach, which is ground up numbers and numerical analysis. He looks at the order of battle first. He doesn't look he doesn't say, I want to make a game. He says, I want to make a game about the Eastern Front. The first thing he'll do is research the order of battle for a couple of months. Every unit he's going to try and evaluate and all like that individually based on what I consider scant information. In my opinion, it's actually very artistic that you decide, oh, well, this unit is going to have a 5 and this unit is going to have a 4 based on the information we have on those units, like it all. At one point, I know Joe Bolkowski came to the point of view, like it all, that all these units are actually relatively similar and would have relatively similar performance over the long term. And it would be hard for us to know whether we're studying statistics about them in a particularly good period of time or an average period of time. But anyhow, the main things I want to say about Dunnigan is he's bottom up, number driven, order of battle driven, and all like that. And he doesn't really care that much about what the topic is. He has a massive interest in history, a very broad interest in history. He's interested in the creative process of taking a historical situation and turning it into a game. And in that way, he impresses me more than a lot of gamers who I think are very, very hemmed in by bias about certain topics and all like that. They're not as curious. They're not as ambitious as Jim. They want to play a game on the Battle of the Bulge and all like that. Well, Jim did that probably several times, like and all, but he also did lots of other things that most people are not that interested in. But and anyhow, I want to just contrast that with me. I look at my interest is the same as Jim's. I'm super interested in military history. I'm not interested in fantasy or science fiction or hypotheticals. I'm interested in learning about a historical situation and then seeing whether the process of designing a game and playing a game can extend my understanding. The best way I put it is this. I'm more interested in why the historical commander lost than how I can win the game and all. Um, so so basically for me, I'm interested in the situation, not the numbers. I'm interested in the challenge or the problem and all like that. What are the Germans trying to do in Italy in 1943 and 1944? Are they trying to do a delaying action? Are they trying to like push people off the beaches? Are they trying to like um, uh, um, maintain the least possible amount of troops in Italy, like and all like that? And I'm interested then of saying, okay, so those are big important variables in this game. Like, what is the German strategy here? And how does the game make the player deal with that strategic problem rather than like in all, you know, is it better to move on this side of this river or that side of that river? Yes, there's a real reason for doing that and all like that. But there's also I don't know what you call it, a scope. There's a weight to the problems in war games, and I'm interested in the heavyweight problems. Like I call it fundamental game design. But so what I do is I look at the situation, I prioritize what are the chief challenges for each side, and then I say, okay, now you have to simplify that as far as possible to make the game playable. And it should be interesting if you're picking the right challenges and you're prioritizing them correctly, the game should design itself. The hard part is making that playable. The hard part is making that game move, not just sit there and all like that. And just briefly, I was just going to mention two more things here. When I talked about the thing I forgot to mention right at the beginning is this year I'm going to be 79 years old. That gives me a perspective that's different from a lot of war gamers because unfortunately I'm older than a lot of war gamers now and all like that. I've been doing this for almost 70 years since I started when I was about 8 and all. But it also makes me feel, Frank, you have very limited time. Every minute you spend in wargaming, you want it to be as valuable as other things you enjoy. And if it's not, then the game is bad or you're a bad designer and all like that. And all. I just want to mention when I went to Compass Expo a few months ago, this is when I proposed to build this new series and all like that. I was sitting waiting for Bill to show up, like this was around lunchtime, and a person was sitting there like says, Frank Davis. And I look at him and I have no idea who he is. I'm not a good person for faces and all. I have no idea who he is. And he says, I say, I'm sorry, I don't really remember who you are. And he says, I'm Lou Ritter and all. And I still don't know who he is. And he says, I worked with you in the 70s at SPI. And I still don't know who he is at all. Then he says this. He says, I sent you a screenplay to evaluate. You agreed that you would give me your evaluation on a screenplay and all like that. And I said, well, how did that turn out? And he said, you hated it. And all like that. And I'm sitting there with this guy, and I felt really, really like humble and deeply apologetic, like, and all like that. I said, I am a really critical person, but usually if it's someone I don't know, I usually like hold back a little. I said, I can't imagine and all like that. And he said, no, you were probably right about a lot of things like and all like that. Anyhow, Lou Ritter and I had this brief conversation. It turns out since he worked with me at SPI in the 70s, he's in his 70s too now. I'm 79 or going to be 79. He's a little younger. So he said, well, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm here to sell a few games to Bill, like, you know. And I started telling him about that these games are designed for people who don't have a lot of time left and all. And Lou asked me some questions and all like that, and I said, like, you know, well, you know, I was involved in 75 and 76 when SPI first started making monster games. And I was like 25 or something like that. And I loved them and all like that. I said, but I don't have the patience now. I don't feel I have the time and I don't feel I have the patience. And Lou said to me, when I buy a game now and I start punching out the counters and doing the setup, he said, first of all, I can't read the hex numbers and all like that. If it's being set up by hex numbers, even if they're on the counters, which is a real smart way of saving time, he said, I can't read the hex numbers. And he said, furthermore, if it takes more than 5 or 10 minutes to set up the game, I close it and put it away, like, you know, like that. Now, obviously, not everyone feels like Lou or like me, like, you know, and I'm not saying everyone should. But what I'm saying is, this is another man who spent many, many years being interested in war games. And he's finding now that he doesn't have the same outlook and the same it's just that he needs a different type of game now. And that's what I think I'm trying to do now. But I'm not doing it for Lou, I'm doing it for myself. But what I found out by talking to a lot of people who played games for a long time, all of them like the history, all of them like the detail, and they like ingenuity when the detail is put into the game, but put into the game in a way that does not overly, you know, slow it down and all like that. And that's what I'm saying. That's the hard part of design, like, and all like that. But what I'm saying is, I believe we should be making more efforts to save players time and to save players from what I call, like, you know, low impact results and all like that. So
would it be fair to say you're shooting for a complete experience without double-digit hours or triple-digit hours time commitment?
Definitely a complete experience in the sense that, first of all, I want to design games that are about the whole campaign, not about discrete operations within the campaign, because you make different choices. If you know you're going to try and like play the game to the end and win it, you're going to make different choices than if you're playing just a battle and the object is to capture, you know, Leningrad, like, you know, like that. And well, so what I'm saying is, those games, the Battle of Leningrad is historically valid, but if you take it out of the context of the longer war, you lose something important. And well, of course, if people are mainly interested in grand tactical or operational or tactical, they accept that. They accept that trade-off, like, and all like that. And that's fine. I'm just saying, for me personally, I like a game like, you know, like where you're going to play the whole Italian campaign. And you'll notice when I show you the maps, the Desert War and the Italian front are both the whole thing. It's not like El Alamein to, what is it, El Aguilia? And well, it's not half of North Africa, it's the whole of North Africa. And well, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on in the last 6 months of the war that's off the map in virtually all North African games, like, and all like that. And well, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this slide, I'll go over quickly. And well, I just want to talk about, I try to talk to people often about what games they like and why. And most of the answers come in that first, what I call subjective criteria and all like that. Stuff like realism, stuff like supporting the theme, the components are beautiful and fun. All of that is subjective. There's no way for me to know without talking further to that person, like, well, what does he mean? And why does he think that this game is more bang for the buck, like, and all like that? Then in the middle, I have what I call objective criteria, which are things that we can all agree on. We don't need like a referee or an interpreter. The last two things, well, the last three things. The first group is very easy to understand. How long does it take to play? The last three things are very important to me, and I don't think we discuss these enough in all our forums and everything like that. First of all, is who does the player represent? If the player is representing something that I feel is real, then I have more interest in the game. If the player is representing an amalgamation of different people with different responsibilities, and all this is now coming under one player's control and all like that, I have less interest in the game because I think the game is going to become less realistic because of that refusal to limit what who the player represents. The second thing and the third thing are pretty related, like and all like that. How much do players know about the situation versus their historical counterpart? I'm going to talk specifically about this a little later in the thing, but almost all war games, players have much more information and knowledge than their historical counterparts had. And it really, for me, it says right from the beginning. It says right from the beginning, I'm not going to be like understanding what the commanders, why they made their decisions or anything like that. I know where the units are, when they're going to come in, where, and all like that, what the combat results table is, and most particularly and most radically, and all, I know every inch of the map. I know where I have to go and how to get there, and how many movement points it costs to go this way, and how many movement points it costs to go that way. And it becomes important in the gameplay to master and exploit those things. What I'm telling you is, in real life, very little of that is true. Very little of that is available to the commanders. So, and I'll make this distinction now, I don't like it all. When I talk to players about this, they say, I don't care. This is just a game. It's a good game. It's a good, what I call a mathematical puzzle. It's an interesting group of little problems that do involve a lot of counting and all like that, but that's what I like and all like that. The problem for me is I'm more interested, like I told you, why did this person lose? Not how can I win and all. And if I know a lot more than either Lee or Meade, and I'm trying to understand Gettysburg better, it doesn't really help me to play a game. So what's the answer to this? I don't have the complete answer, but I can toss out a little bit. The complete answer is that you need more variables in the game, but you don't need so many that the game becomes like, flaky.
Tic-tac-toe.
Well, I call it flaky, like, and all like that. You put in so many variables and all like that, and you lose what I call the priority. What are the big challenges and all? So I'm saying within the big challenges, you need some big variables and all, and they will affect play balance. And you can then decide, do you want to adjust like a handicap for play balance, but you have the variable in and all like that. For me, I just want people to understand, I feel like I'm being deceived by the game designer because the game designer is giving me too much information. This comes up very strongly in Pacific games. And in Pacific games, whether it's a tactical game or a strategic game, like that, intelligence is one of the key things, and it's not really modeled well in war games. Last thing is related to who does the players represent. how much decision-making authority do players have versus their historical counterpoint? I heard on your show a few weeks ago, I don't remember who you were talking to, and I don't remember which game you were talking to, but you'll remember. You guys were talking and you said this, guy. You said, in reality, a commander really can only manage 2 or 3 or 4 formations and all like that. And all. I think you were talking about divisions and all like that. Um, and that made a lot of sense to me. And what I'm saying is the games, to me, the games, most war games have a childlike power trip built into them, which is I can control the world. I can like control production and I can control tactical like nuances and I can control like and all like and I've heard you talking all about how team play makes this more acceptable and I agree with that. If you want to play these big games, and I still think they're beyond like what a team of 3 people could really like manage if it was a simulation and all. But when you have one player managing ruling the world like a John Protas Third Reich or something like that, it kind of gets like, to me, juvenile and all. And I want to just emphasize that word. I can't help the fact that I'm almost 80 years old. A lot of games and a lot of people seem juvenile to me. When you get to be 80, you might feel like I feel and all like that. Okay, so just quickly on my side, with my criteria, number one importance to me is the graphic design. If the game doesn't look interesting and attractive, I'm not interested, like, like that. Second most important thing is the pace of play. Is the game compelling? Is the game tedious? Is the game time consuming? I always make a comparison here. If a movie is too long, if there are scenes that don't hold your interest, then you don't like that movie. Well, we should be applying the same thing to war games. We should feel that every 5 minutes that we're playing that game, it's important. If things are happening like in all, and it's like moving. It's like it's a fast pace. It's like exciting. It's like so anyhow, continuing down, the length of the game, if the overall length is more than about 3 hours, I'm not interested in it. Now that what I will say is arbitrary on my part. I read some very long books and I'm willing to invest maybe 10 days on a book and all like that. I would invest 10 days in a game that I felt was compelling, that every minute I was learning something valuable in, but I don't find that to be the case. I find that a lot of it seems like filler in a TV series. In a TV series, you have some of the episodes where they just seem to be put in there so they have 8 episodes or something like that. That's a problem for me. Verisimilitude, well, emotional impact is important. I want to feel, in addition to learning, I want to feel like I'm taking risks, like I'm in some suspense, like I have some uncertainty. I have risk. I already mentioned risk. If a game doesn't provide that, I don't care how many units get eliminated and all like that. Okay. The next thing is verisimilitude, and I like that word. I've heard you use that word. Mm-hmm. Verisimilitude means the appearance of reality. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean real reality. It means when you're playing it like in all, or when you're watching the movie, you do suspend your disbelief to a certain extent, and you do feel that you're participating in something real. And that goes back to what I was saying about having too much knowledge and too much authority. Verisimilitude is hurt if you have too much knowledge and too much authority and all like that. And authority in my criteria means that the game designer seems to be really knowledgeable about what they're doing. I don't care whether it's a simple game or a complicated game. Authority means this person, I understand that there was a reason why they did it this way. And whether I like it or not, I'm not questioning their authority about how they made that decision. I might have made it different, but I think that they made a reasonable choice. So the summary of this is that the game convey the speed, uncertainty, and tension of the events, as well as as an authoritative military history book on the subject. For me, 90% of most war games don't succeed in that. Let's go. I just hit my computer. You go to the next screen.
There we go.
Okay. This one I can go over faster. This is talking about complexity and also talking about reviewers. Kev Sharp is very iconoclastic, strong-minded, honest, down-to-earth reviewer who tells you when he gets a game for free and all like that, but is not afraid to call out silliness in games. This URL link, I hope people will go and watch this video review. This is a video review, and Kevin reminds me a little of myself when I talk to my wife. This is a video review where Kevin has a meltdown trying to understand and appreciate the game design of the GTS Grand Tactical System as it's used in the Race for Bastogne. He literally, I was afraid for his health because he was trying to really express how he felt about this game. And the basic message of this review is they're hiding behind complexity. This game could be a lot more elegant and more fun to play, but they're doing too many, they got too many plates in the air. And I can't remember exactly the details, but I'll just give you a brief overview. They have action points. The action points then can be used to buy dispatches or to make dispatches. The dispatches can then be used to probably activate lower level people. As he points out, the chain of command goes from the corps or division commander to the company or platoon commander with nothing really in between, nor should there be anything in between, because that would just add more the complexity to it and all like that. And then he also brings in a couple of things that I mentioned before, that you go through all these problems and then the results are low impact results. The unit is shaken. And as he said, the best way to play this game is just like to have a mobile barrage over and over, and all like that, and then stick a guy next to it and have him assault it. He says there's really very little nuance to the tactics. But I can't criticize the game and justify what he said. You should watch it yourself. The important thing is, unlike a lot of reviewers, Kevin is trying to tell you the truth of why he doesn't like a game. And he's not just saying it doesn't have, it's crunchier or it's not crunchy enough or something like that. It's very hard to do what Kevin is trying to do. He's trying to explain, he's trying to give a detailed, formal criticism of a game design online. We don't have very much of that at all in our industry. And when there is someone doing it, I want to call out and say it can be done. And this guy definitely might affect your buying decision. You might say, God, that game sounds terrible. Or you might say, well, Kevin's got his own preferences, and I don't have those same preferences, so I don't care. I'm going to try that game anyhow. The important thing, though, is that he's giving a detailed criticism, not a subjective. He's criticizing specific parts of the design and how they all work together or don't work together, and why they don't work for him. Okay, on the bottom of this, I just want to go over this. This is a cool part, in terms of talking about games. Basically, we all know what we like, and we all have biases. Like I said, Bill says people don't want to play North Africa. I think North Africa is a fascinating campaign, and all like that. The more you read about it, the more interested you become, and all like that. But we have our biases. But the bottom line here is what I consider important. Not all opinions are equal. and all like that. If someone like Kevin is trying to explain why he likes the game, it's it's it has more validity for me because his opinion is informed. He plays a lot of games, but he's critically minded and he reads history and he's critically minded. He works like a designer. My comment to Kevin after I watched his review, my comment is time to put on the design hat, Kevin. No one's going to design a game like it all that's going to match like you think it should be. And I think he could do it, as I've told you many times. You could do it, and all like that. So let's go on to the next slide.
I agree with you. I think Kevin often has some really good analysis, and I remember that particular video. And it's interesting for me because that is a system that I have played, and I have heard other people explain why they don't like it. A lot of people won't necessarily have enough language to describe the problem, and I think Kev does. So I think his points made in that video were well. Even though I like GTS, his points in that video are still well taken.
I think Kevin has the language, but I also think he has the balls, and all like that. I think Kevin really likes fighting. He likes fighting in war games, but he also likes fighting with other people about whether a game is making sense, whether it's a payoff for him. Okay, so we're going to move into a little bit more straightforward part of this discussion now. You know by now that I don't like games that are excessively long or excessively complicated. When I started designing this new series, and I told you I was trying to break through on Divine Wind, the first thing I said to myself is, well, why are these games so long? Why do they take so long? And all like that. The first thing I decided is the number of pieces and the number of locations on the map are the most important factors that make a game shorter or longer. And they're also the most simple and direct to manipulate as a designer. So the first two decisions I made in the series was, I want a game that has fewer moving pieces and fewer locations on the map. Because to me, the fewer the pieces and the fewer the locations, the more valuable each of those things are. And the more, it's not as many decisions, but the more important those decisions are, because you don't have, hordes of Russians that can become cannon fodder and all. And I also will point out my note on this slide, and all like that, because it's going to be part of the later thing, part of the next thing. The next slide, we'll talk about stuff like evaluating units and assigning numerical ratings and all like that. And in my quest for simplification and speeding up the game, and all, I realized this idea that logistics is really important, and particularly if you're interested in high-level command games. What the high-level command mainly does is make sure people get what they need to fight. They don't tell them necessarily where to go. They certainly don't tell them go to this extra versus this extra, and all like that. But they are very, very responsible for deciding who gets the gasoline and all like that. And notice as soon as you get to that point, notice you're not talking about do you have a line of contiguous X's free of enemy zones of control. You're talking about, can that division get the logistics it needs to do something I want it to do? Which means it's localized. It's not, supply lines assume non-local supply, that it's all over and all like that. My games, again, in an effort to make them actually simpler and shorter, I realized supply has to be in a specific location to be useful and all like that. But the note that I wanted to say is an army unit with no gas and no ammo has no combat value. It takes no time to move because it's not going anywhere.
Right.
So it doesn't matter all tremendous amount of analysis that you can put into the units. If you don't get the logistics right, you're taking a really like a really what I call a bad shortcut. But I do want to say I've talked to a lot of people and they say they're not interested in the logistics part of the game. They're not really interested in the command parts of the game. They're interested in moving the units, rolling the dice, and hopefully eliminating other units.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can get the same thing when you're 10, like playing like with little soldiers or something like that. If you were interested in history, and one of my themes are wargamers interested in history? If you're interested in history, you have to understand how it works. And it doesn't work by, as we'll get to, it doesn't work by moving all these units up and totaling up their combat strengths and rolling a die, like, you know, like that, which is, of course, very controversial. And we'll talk a little about it. And I don't know if I'll be able to convince people. But I say here, instead of combat and movement points, I use a single supply chain entity called operation points to drive all movement and combat mechanics. Finally, I minimize the size of the CRT, the variety of combat results, and the number of possible die roll modifiers that can be taken into account. I want to say I do that not because like it's better. I do that because I can make the game run faster. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, I do think that we as wargamers in our love for details sometimes forget or willingly ignore the amount of cognitive load involved in just handling potentially hundreds of pieces and potentially many thousands of map locations.
We'll try and not spend too much time on it, but I will say I was at SPI from 71 to 77. The two games that were done there at that time that were most influential to me are Scrimmage and Solomon's Campaign, both of which are highlighted in this video, like in well. And with Scrimmage, Dunnigan really saw it as a war game. He also saw it as a way of dealing with understanding man-to-man tactics and all like that. And he later employed a lot of the design mechanics that he put into Scrimmage, which is a football game, and all like that, into later games like I think it's Sniper, and a couple of others. He even said that the plot to assassinate Hitler was partially influenced by this game. But I'm going to skip the part that everyone knows about this. First of all, this is an example. Oh, wait, you have to move to the next slide.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. The first it says it was rejected, and the first thing is wargamers are surprisingly topic and genre biased. They reject the same game system if the topic does not mention their interest. In other words, you can have very similar mechanics in a game, but you can change the map underlying it, and the result will be completely different. Dunnigan didn't make that kind of distinction. Dunnigan saw this as a really interesting tactical war situation, and it has a lot of elements and it's also just brilliant. Instead of a combat results table, he has a contact results table. The contact result can be something where you're sort of hanging on to the other player and he can't move and all like that, which is something it's equivalent to what we have like with suppression and stuff like that, but it's more it has more long-term effect. You don't get rid of it by rolling a die. You get rid of it by spending movement points in the future to break away contact and all like that. And the movement tactically, the other reason why Scrimmage is not popular is that the hex grid doesn't seem to be a good mechanism for simulating football. The movement is very detailed as it is in a tactical war game, and you do spend movement points every time you move or change facing or anything like that. But the result is it takes an incredibly long time to play. Now, despite the fact, and I should have mentioned this before, scrimmage, one of the reasons I love it is there's only 11 pieces per side. Chess, there's only what, 16 pieces per side, and all like that. But scrimmage is probably the least amount of pieces of any war game, like, and all like that. And yet, it takes an incredibly long time to play because the movement mechanics, the facing, the hexes together produce a cumbersome way of, of movement and a cumbersome way of simulating what actually goes on a football field and all. And so for people who like football, like me, right, the war gamers, like I said, they have their bias, and that's okay. They don't like football, so they weren't interested in this as the war game. I understand. But for people who like football like this, the game still failed, not because there aren't a lot of good ideas in it, but because Dunnigan didn't get to the point where he said it takes too long to play and all like that. Incidentally, I read Hardy developed both this game and Solomon's campaign. I read Hardy played football in college. He was the developer. He understood the game of football. Together, they made a very good war game about football. But in this case, a war game, in this game, the baggage that comes from being a war game designer actually works to the detriment of the topic and all like that. But I want you to hold that thought because I feel that this baggage can also affect war games and all like that. So let's move to the next slide.
One of these days, I do have to actually put scrimmage on the table and fiddle with it.
It's one of Mark Herman's favorite games too. Mark, I think that as designers, people are impressed with the idea of using war game mechanics to simulate football.
Yes.
And it is a good idea. I'm just saying they didn't streamline it enough. They didn't do what I'm saying I had to do with Divine Wind. When I realized it was going to take 12 hours to play, I just realized, well, that's not the kind of game I want to put out. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the same problem now in a war game and all. First of all, this is a good series of videos that was done by Mark Ruggiero, I think a year before he passed away, like and all. It's good for me in the sense that this explains everything that I've always disliked about wargaming. And what it does is it shows step by step. It's a playthrough, and it shows step by step the movement of every unit during the Salerno phase of the Italian campaign. And there are only a few units on the board, just like in scrimmage. But in this game, what happens here is the player second guesses himself. The player says, what's the defense strength of this unit? How many factors do I want to get next to that unit to attack? How do I do that? Let me try this route with this unit. He can't quite make it. Maybe if I go back and try another route, he can make it to where I want him to be. Then let me see if I can get another unit to outflank him on the other side. And then the guy will be screwed if I get a defensive retreat because he won't be able to retreat because of the zone of control, okay? Those are basic war game mechanics. The problems with them are, in Italy, here, they didn't know how many retreat paths or where the Germans were going. They didn't know how to get to where the Germans were and all like that. They didn't have good maps and all like that. The terrain was much more difficult to maneuver through and to, choose the shortest possible route that you're trying to do in the game. And although I don't think that was the highest priority for the commander because he really didn't know. He didn't know necessarily where he was going or where he would encounter an obstacle or a resistance, like and all like that. And the whole game is spent trying to do these war game mechanics, all of which involve far too much knowledge of the enemy, far too much knowledge of the terrain, and far too much knowledge of like the CRT and everything like that. So it becomes a math puzzle.
Hmm.
Now, it is a pretty good math puzzle if that's what you like doing and all like that. However, even if you like doing that, one of the things that I have to say that's driven me crazy since I was 8 years old is this idea like, oh, I'm going to move this unit here. No, no, wait, I'm going to move him over here. No, wait, like in all like that, I want to move him back where I was. Well, that's slowing the game down, really for no real benefit, like in all like that. There's no connection to reality and all like that. And since I was 8 years old, I said, this doesn't feel like what I read about in my military history book. If this is what it really felt like, I don't think the guy would have even written the book because this is so dull and tedious and dumb and all like that, that, everything cool about the situation is is not really being surfaced, and it's not being done in a way that's compelling and all. But I tried to point out the reasons why this is not just slow but unrealistic, not and all. And I'm comparing this directly to the scrimmage game, which had the same problem, only this is in a real historical military event. You can say, well, you don't like Anzio because it was an attritional battle and all like that. Except like in football with football passes, the Allies in Anzio have amphibious operation capabilities.
Hmm.
So there is no reason why like they can never break through and all like that. But and all like that, the game doesn't like really focus and make it not only understandable, but preferable to use the amphibious operations to try and break the deadlocks and all like that. The Italian campaign is one of the most fascinating campaigns with one of the best German generals in World War II and all. And the terrain is fascinating and all like that. And the fact that it combines air, land, and sea with a relatively small number of units and all like that makes it an ideal situation for a good war game to be designed. It makes it an ideal design challenge, and it also makes it a good player situation for a game and all. And I also will say two more things. I mentioned before the most important thing to me is graphics. This age of Avalon Hill graphics and all like that is about the reverse of what I was hoping for. First of all, my first rule is you should always be able to see the whole theater and all like that. Somehow they've managed to make Italy unidentifiable, which is almost impossible and all like that. And third, like it just looks like a magic marker drawing like mounds or something like that. I mean, there really is, and I guess I should mention here. Um, yes, the technology was more primitive. They didn't have computers, and people didn't have the sophistication that they have now about game art and all like that. But it still could have been a lot better than this. This gives me the feeling. I'm sorry, my hand is right in the screen. This gives me the feeling that Tom Shaw and the people at Avalon Hill just didn't care about how things looked and all. And yet Tom Shaw is the one who told me the box has to be red or it won't be a successful game.
Hmm.
And all like that. And I agree with him, but I don't agree with him about the design of this map. Anyhow, the more important thing is, like I said, the time wasted by the player going through the mechanics of the war game paradigm, which is the paradigm pretty much that Dunnigan and Charles Roberts developed in the 1970s. And it is a good paradigm. It does make a good math puzzle, but it's not the only way to do it.
Hmm.
And all like that. Okay, so let's go. Unless you have some other idea about
No,
it.
I just think I'm sort of framing your central argument now, I guess, as the challenge of moving a design away from spending a lot of time on the geometry puzzle that is the map and the numerical factors that you're playing with, and further toward the strategic or operational or whatever level you're talking about decisions that the commanders on scene are actually struggling with, rather than the math part of it.
That's a nice way of putting it. It is in line with the way I feel, but um, I think also whether it's more realistic or less realistic, what I would argue is it's too time consuming. There's not a payoff for the time spent with that. Okay, so this one we can go really quickly through. This is just talking about the number of locations on the map, and it's comparing different styles of maps, like and all. And the most interesting part, well, the most interesting part for me is the Gettysburg map, which is the second war game I ever played, and all like that, which was squares and all like that. And the one on the other side, the Gettysburg campaign map, and the Gettysburg campaign map here has a lot in common with one of my own designs, which is the whole idea of, this is a big idea in wargaming. Does the historical situation require that you have enough units with or without zones of control to cover the front in a contiguous manner? Or does the situation require that you probably don't have enough units to have a contiguous a contiguous line? And if that's the truth, then how does that change the whole game system and the whole game mechanics? And Frederick the Great dealt with that back in 1974, like in all. The Civil War also matches completely. As a matter of fact, what's interesting to me is both Mark Herman and I have had a similar pathway, which is the Pacific War and then the Civil War. Now, what do they have in common? Both are non-contiguous. Both are basically large, undefined spaces, which we'll talk about when we get to the Keegan slide, undefined spaces and all like that, where intelligence and reconnaissance and all like that turn out to be very important, and chaining supply or using railroads for supply. But the main thing is, these are not set piece battles. These are not Russian front style games and all like that. And the map design is designed because it's a different kind of war. And everyone knows the Pacific was a different kind of war, like and all like that. And I think that's all I really want to say. But like what I'm saying is, when people say, well, they don't like point to point, or they don't like area, or they don't like hex, and all like that, there are reasons that underlie that have to do with the understanding the historical situation, which make some of those choices better than others. But I do agree, and I say this now, reason why a lot of area games and point-to-point games are totally rejected, the artwork is not up to snuff. There's no reason why those games can't be really, really interesting games and really attractive games. You look at most point-to-point games, and then all of Europe is just filled with a bunch of exactly the same boxes, like they're all like that, connected with lines. It's like Chutes and Ladders or something like that, like and all like that. And this is again like what I was saying about Redmond. This is actually criminal negligence. Game companies need to be serious about game art. I don't necessarily mean that they need to have a totally realistic map. What I mean is they need to have an interesting map. They need to have an interesting map and an attractive map and all. And then there's a lot of ways you can do, a lot of things you can do with that. And I think that even to this day, and even with the great improvements we've had in game graphics, there's still a lot of games that are released where like the map looks like an afterthought and all like that, or sometimes not even an afterthought, just well, we won't show that in the AI. Okay, so I'm ready to move on.
Very frequently, as you mentioned, I thought it was very interesting that you distinguished between graphics and information design, because that is a thing. The information design is, I think, something that we tend to forget about, right? Because it's either irritating and it annoys you and you say, these are not very well designed player aids or whatever it is you're looking at, or it's good and we don't recognize that whoever has published the game has done a good job of presenting the information in the most usable way to the players.
What was I going to say? Yeah, I think if it's well done, it doesn't call attention to itself, and we don't tend to appreciate it. And if it's poorly done, like it's like those bad scenes in a movie, like like that. But I don't blame the publishers. I blame gamers and game buyers. If that's the artwork you're satisfied with, then you know you're not helping a lot of us, like like that. Every game should be beautiful, period. And more of them are now than they used to be, and like that. Okay, so now I want to talk about this business about the war gamers care about history using the most fearful sacrifice. And I'm not going to go into all the details. I've already covered a lot of these things. The problem is always that the player doesn't feel the there's something compelling about the lead up to Gettysburg and the fact that no one really knows where the other forces are, and no one has really planned to have a battle here. And what we're going to do in the games is always reenact it as close as possible to what actually happened. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, if you want to do a grand tactical reenactment of Gettysburg, games like this will do a reasonably good job. But the interesting thing, and I've heard Kev Sharp says this and Mark Herman says this, the interesting thing is in the Civil War, the operational campaigns that surround this, because Gettysburg may not have happened, or Gettysburg might have happened with different forces and arriving that day and like that. Again, the variables need to be important and they need to be prioritized and they need to make the best. They need to give the player more the feeling of not being sure how the game is going to unfold. And we know too much about history and we know too much about the battlefield at Gettysburg to make that game interesting. It's a game that's, like I said, it's educational because it's a reenactment and like that. But I think it could be a reenactment, and it could be more interesting if players played around with the idea. And a few games have tried this. Where do the reinforcements come? When do they come? Like that. How much of the reinforcement schedule is set in stone? The arrival roads and all like that. It just, as I said before, it just doesn't feel the same playing this game as it does reading about the few days before Gettysburg and then the way the battle developed and all like that. It's like you know the story, you know what you're getting into, and all like that. And I just want to reinforce again something I've said before, and it's one of the more difficult problems in war game design. This business about the map being so defined in advance compared to the actual experience. We'll talk about this in a minute with Keegan in the 1862 campaign. As a matter of fact, let's just keep going and see because that's a better example of what I'm going to talk about. I will say, however, silly game mechanics and all like that, based on cards. One of the other things that I absolutely hate about games, which I'm not sure where it comes up in this, is when they become too fanciful and all like that, which means and all like that, it becomes not based on probability. It becomes based on random events. And I guess I'll give the example now and all like that. Um, I had a couple of bad experiences that really taught me something about game design and all. And they were both almost exactly the same. One is with Herman Lettman's new game, Viva la Emperor,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is with an older game called Field Commander Rommel.
Mm-hmm.
Field Admiral Nimitz. Not Field Admiral, just
Fleet
Admiral.
Admiral, yeah.
Yeah, Fleet Admiral Nimitz. In both cases, they're solitaire games. They work off a table of random events, but it could be cards and all like that. But again, like with the art, I feel that the designers have not been taking the problem seriously. And I'm going to give. I'll use Viva la Emperor, but the Fleet Commander Nimitz had the exact same problem. Let's use Fleet Commander Nimitz first. The beginning of the game, the Japanese have defeated Pearl Harbor, and they defeated like most of Southeast Asia and all like that. And then you're going to the second turn, and you roll, and the random event table gives you this result: return for refit and all. The Japanese fleet. It's a 1 out of 6 chance or 1 out of 10 chance or something like that, and all like that and all. Now there really hasn't been like, what I'm saying is, yeah, that actually happened. It's a variable that should be in the game, but it's not being done carefully. When I played it, it happened 2 or 3 times where the Japanese could have swept the board, but the luck said, no, you got to go back to port and watch the decks and all like that. So that's one example. And all. But then recently, Herman Lettman has a fairly recent game called Viva la Emperor, which is again a very simple solitaire game. I'm not against simple games, but I'm against silly mechanics and all like that. In his game, he also has a random events table, and I was watching a playthrough of this one. It wasn't me myself, and on the first turn, the player plays the French, and the system plays the British, and all. On the first turn, in other words, the random events, whether it's a die roll or a card, is going to tell you how to handle the British. The first turn, the event for the British is advance to the nearest French corps or something like that. And I immediately said to myself, wait a minute. Wellington has developed this whole reverse slope defensive deployment, and he's personally picked that particular part of Mont Saint-Jean as a perfect defensive position and all like that. And the French haven't attacked or anything yet, so he's going to leave his defensive position and go out in the open on the first turn to try his luck against the French in the open field. That was big, okay? And again, you could have some, in that game, I don't even think you should have that possibility at all like that, because it's totally against the history. It's totally against what the British Army was all about there and all. But the French make a die roll for some reason that you're supposedly the French are under the player's control. The French make a die roll for some reason. I'm not sure what forced that and all like that. And what they do on either the first or second turn is launch the Young Guard and all like that, which is always the strategic reserve or a grand tactical reserve, and all like that. And there hasn't really even been any skirmish fire, and they're launching the Young Guard. Okay, this is like when I get like Kevin. This to me is criminal negligence. This is bad design and all. And one of the reviewers, a popular reviewer, and all like that, actually 2 of them put him on the 10 best games of the year list and all. And that brings me back to a point I skipped over earlier, which is maybe we need to have a peer review system for both reviewers and designers, so that who reviews books? People have written books about the same topic, not people who are just game players. Yeah, well, we can have some of them because they have a different perspective and all. but where are the peer reviews? Where are the educated reviews that point out stuff like what me and Kevin are pointing out now? And how do we get better games if we just accept that kind of stuff? And all like that. Okay, so I call these anti-historical design choices. And what I'm saying, do war gamers care about history? A lot of these games are popular. A lot of these games are played in tournaments. A lot of these games get good reviews, like and all like that. That indicates to me that war gamers don't really care that much about history, or they haven't read it. They don't know that the mistake is there. I don't know. Anyhow, I'm ready to move on.
And I can't argue with you. I do think there's some war gamers who are into it for the historical insights that war games can provide, but there are just as many and probably more people who are either interested in the war game, and I'm as guilty as anybody else here, in the geometry puzzle or in the competitive nature of what war games typically are.
What I say, and I don't mean to be nasty about this, but what I say is, why aren't those people playing shuffleboard? You can have a competitive game and you can improve your skills in the game mechanics of shuffleboard, and you don't have to worry about knowing anything about history at all. Okay, this is probably what I consider the most important slide in the whole show. And I can't talk authoritatively about it, partially because this is only based on a chapter in one book by John Keegan. People at SPI remember that in the 1970s, I started lecturing everyone after I read The Face of Battle by John Keegan and all like that, which was the first book that was trying to give you more of an understanding of what people could actually do on the field, given the fact that there was smoke, given the fact that there was a lot of disorganization, there weren't good command structures and stuff like that. So the question that Keegan brought out is, what constraints and what abilities does someone like Napoleon have once he's on that field of battle? It's not by accident that Napoleon said the battle is won before we launch our attack, all like that. And that's true of Gettysburg too, and all like that. But this chapter really, really impressed me. The book is John Keegan. It's called Intelligence in War. It's a new book. I believe it was published within the last 2 years, and all like that. And he has one chapter. It's different chapters about intelligence. He has a very good one on the 1798 naval campaign of Nelson trying to find the French fleet in the Mediterranean. That chapter is so good. I immediately wrote to another designer and said, why don't we do a Mediterranean chase game using Jerry White's system to model this situation? Because it's all about not knowing where the French are and all like that. Anyhow, this is very easy to understand. Keegan says that the Union did not have any maps that showed the roads, the rivers, the passes, the bridges, or the fords. And that's why Jackson outmaneuvered. Jackson hired someone from near where he lived he lived in the southern part of Virginia and all like that. He knew someone and he paid him to go and make maps and all like that. And Keegan points out there was no triangulation. The American government had not yet produced a map of Virginia that was of a military quality that you could follow and get to where you wanted to go and all like that. And I didn't know much about this, but they talked about how these maps were made by people who would go to these high points, and I don't know whether they would signal some way or something like that, but they would form these triangles, and all like that, I guess like radar and all like that. But it was astonishing to me because there's a lot of what I consider to be decent games about the Valley campaign and all. And Keegan is saying, well, they're all deeply flawed because the Union doesn't know anything about the map and all. And just think, I used to compare this to another analogy I used to make. Think about the difference in football if you always know what play is going to be run. And well, it takes away one of the key qualities of what makes football an interesting and exciting kind of game. It's uncertainty. It's guesswork and all like that. Think about how different a Shenandoah game is going to be if um, you don't know where the enemy is, and you also don't know where the fords are, or like that. Yeah, it might be a nightmare, but it might not be a total nightmare if you design it carefully and all like that. But the key reason why this impressed me, I've been talking throughout my talk about how we know so much because of the map, and we love the maps, and we want the maps and all like that. But then we say, well, I don't really, I have this benefit of this information, but so does the other player. So it just comes out in the wash and all like that. I'm just saying, well, you're not really getting, um, you're not really getting the right movie, like and all like that. So again, I don't know exactly how to solve this problem, but it made me feel, hey, we could make a much better Valley campaign game and all. Now, I don't know. I haven't played all of the ones. I don't know if some of the newer ones make some of this information harder to come by, or whether they go totally to hidden. I know that Kevin said he was going to play, I believe, an Army of the Potomac game where it was going to be completely double blind and hidden, and he said that that was really the only way to play a game like that, and Keegan backs him up and all like that. I don't know if it was this particular campaign. And the most astonishing part is, even though the Confederates were often fairly close to Washington, the Union didn't know where they were, and they were always afraid that there were more of them than they were, and all like that, and all like that. All of that is what I call the prioritization of the situation, and we don't. And I will say, some designers do try and make efforts on this. Like, for instance, in the Battle of the Bulge and all like that, they'll say, well, the Allies can't move at all for the first 2 turns or something like that. Okay, so that's one way of trying to introduce surprise, and it's a pretty good way. But again, it should be fine-tuned. It should be really, really smart the way it is, so that um, the feeling. I mean, Danny Parker and I have talked about this. The feeling is not that the rule says I can retreat 1 or 2 hexes, but how do the soldiers feel about what they don't know, and how does that affect where they think they should retreat to and stuff like that, and all. I'm beginning to get into a murky area, like and all, which I try and avoid. But what I'm saying is, again, like the Valley campaign, the Bulge is a great situation, and it can be a much better game without all the complexity, but with more of the interest and more and more of the dynamic risk, quick pace, and well, not exactly quick pace, because it was, of course, the congestion and all like that and all. But maybe the congestion is not the best thing to dwell on in the simulation and all like that. If you change the scale, then the congestion problem changes. Again, most of my design work has to do, and Mark Herman says the same thing. Most of it has to do with picking a scale and all. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, we've done some of this. This has to do with the player's feeling of wanting to control everything and all like that. There's so many constraints on real commanders that can lead to their being removed from their position, or court-martialed or something like that, as well as simple. You got to do what your superior says and all like that. And I don't think those constraints are built into too many war games. And I think constraints are what make games more historical and all like that. It's different from scripting. Scripting says it's got to be done exactly the way it happened. Constraints just means your options are limited and all like that. It's not like a case of can you invade anywhere in Italy, or do you have to invade somewhere where the fighter cover can reach, and all like that,
Mm-hmm.
and all. Right here I repeat again, a childlike appetite for imagined power. This is probably the toughest nut to crack with wargamers. I don't believe anyone will ever convince them that they should not be the Matrix and know everything and control everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move on. We're going to finally, okay, we're finally getting to some overview of my solutions. As this becomes easily understandable now, how many hexes and counters does it take to slow a game down to 0 turns per hour? And the game design and the scale and everything like that is brought out in this and some of the other things I'm talking about. The whole theater of Italy, from Sicily to the Gothic line, I call this the Rommel line, the original way Rommel wanted to defend.
Mm-hmm.
And down here we have the Kesselring line, which is the southern defense. And all. What I've done, going back to my slide about chess and all, what I've done is reduce the number of units and reduce the number of locations. All these games, the whole series, they have 25 zones. There's distinctions among the zones. They're called campaign zones and operation zones. But like there's only 25 of them in all these. Sometimes there can be as low as 21, but most they could be as 25, like and all like that. Um, um, so you're not dealing with the fine details, like and all like that. But and then in terms of units, I'm going to talk about units, and I'm going to talk about the supply system and all. In terms of units, the units are always shown on the top and bottom of the map. Here they're on the east and the west. These are Army group and Army and Corps level formations.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only movable units on the map. There's usually 12 or less and all like that. So far, apart from the Russian campaign, although I've managed to make the Russian campaign fairly compact too, and all like that. So the first thing is there are fewer locations and there are fewer moving pieces. And right there, the whole game feels different. Like, it feels more like what I call, and this was my original design goal, what I call historical chess with real geography and all like that. But it's on the level of every move and every piece counts and all like that. And the third main way we save space is that instead of having movement points and combat strengths, and here I'm just going to show you something. I'm going to get the two games that influenced my design, because I don't think too many people know about these yet. Okay, the first game, can you see this?
Yeah, here we go.
Unconditional Surrender. This is the new version by Salvasta and all like that. And then the other game that influenced this work is this one, which very few people know about, from Salerno to Rome, Sergio Schiavi, from an Italian company, and all like that. Both of these are excellent games. As good as any game like the Last Blitzkrieg or the Last Gamble or something like that. However, like those two games, they have one flaw. And okay, both of them use, instead of movement points and combat strengths, both of them use the concept of what they call action points. Action points are points that you keep track of and that you have to spend to perform most maneuver or combat situations and all like that. And first of all, the brilliance of the idea is that they're simplifying three concepts sorted down to one, which is movement, combat, and supply, and to some extent command too. They're simplifying all that into one piece of architecture and all like that. The problem that both of these games have, and when I say that they're very influential, the problem that both of these games have is they become unmanageable when the number of units increases in the game and the number of action points increases. They're still intricate, well-designed games, but again, the designers, and I'm not holding myself up as the only answer here, but the designers did not say, is this going to scale up when I have all of Europe fighting or something like that? It might scale up, but how long is it going to take to play? And is it going to be more interesting or more tedious as it scales up? Now, Salvasta has corrected that initial problem. It's not a mistake. He corrected it with this. What he did here is he took the different campaigns in Europe and he made them individual games in the same box. So there's never that many units in any of these games, and the number of action points is smaller and all like that. He was working on this at the same time I was working on mine. We weren't really corresponding. But now he has his map. He has his map. He has his map really there, which I'm going to show you compared to mine, like and all. I think Salvasta's solution, his recognition of the problem and his solution are both brilliant. I really commend him, like and all like that. Well, we'll just get to that when we get to my game. But what basically my whole design philosophy, we'll come back to this in a minute. My whole design philosophy is to find a really good design and then reduce it for playability. Really good situation with a good conceptual framework, but it's becoming too top heavy. It's becoming, it's being overladen with and all like that. So that's a simple explanation of what I'm doing here, like all like that. So the only thing about this slide that you need to know is you don't have the same movement situation as you have here, like all like that. You're really only deciding where at the Allies you're deciding, that is the Germans you're deciding what objectives you want to hold. Ports and airborne bases are important, and also these defense lines, which can be improved, like and all like that, before they have a real strong combat effect. And there are 4 of them: Kesselring, Gustav, Gothic, and Rommel, and all. And also, where are you going to put, are you going to give more logistical support to the British 8th Army on the eastern flank, or on the 5th Army, the U.S. 5th Army on the western flank? For many people, this may sound too simple, but for me, this is capturing the strategic situation better than this does. Like, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just an overview of each of the pairs of games that I talked about. This part of here, this is really all just marketing, but the point is that these are both Mountain War and Desert War are both remakes of early Avalon Hill games. That was done deliberately. Those games were influential to me, but I didn't actually enjoy playing them that much, like and all like that. And I said, I said, why doesn't someone try and design a new Anzio or a new Africa Corps? And people have been trying to do an Africa Corps, and some of them are pretty good. But the main thing is, these games are designed to be tournament games. These games are designed to play in a tournament and all like that, because they're fast, they're somewhat lightweight, they have some interesting new features They have some complexities built in, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and all like that. But they're not meant to compete with the last Blitzkrieg and the last Gamble, because because I don't have time to design those games and I don't have time to play those games. It just says some of the things I wanted to point out is make essential military command decisions in a groundbreaking, visually stunning environment. That's subjective. People may not like these maps. So far, I've gotten good feedback for most of them. I myself had questions. I myself said they look like toys. They look like shiny toys, like and all like that, and all. The artist I want to point out now, because I'm talking about him a lot this year. The artist is someone I discovered in Japan named Ichiro Nakani. He was doing his own little drawings, military drawings, and publishing them online, like and all. And I came across them, and I contacted him, and I said, I'm working on a new set of games. Do you want to be the graphic designer? And he said, I don't really have any professional experience doing that. And I said, yeah, but I've seen the way you draw. And I said, you could definitely do this, like and all like that. And I guarantee you can do this. And as his work has progressed, I'm telling him now, and not everyone will agree with me. I'm telling him now, he's doing some of the best artwork in the business right now. When I showed it to Compass, they were immediately impressed. These maps are really, really impressive in their full size printing. Because all the details are really clear, the charts are really easy to read, and everything like that. They're designed as information systems. Almost all the information in the game is on the map, the same way we used to do for S&T magazine. So you don't need a lot of table space either, and all like that. So let's move on to another slide.
And I'm noticing a lack of the tables in particular. I notice the lack of sort of the Byzantine quality that a lot of war games, including many that I like, have in their table design and information presentation. These are very straightforward tables.
Well, first of all, these are playtest versions. The table entries, the rows, will change. That's the result of playtesting. We figure out either to change these variables or to add some and to remove some and all like that. We could always make an optional table that was bigger if we had to, but the idea is, again, the prioritization. I want a variable called campaign level events. Those are higher level events. I want a thing called operation events, which actually affects combat within a zone, like and all like that. And we'll talk about that in a minute when we talk about the operations points and all. I just wanted one more thing about the artwork. This is something I sent to Sachero, and I said, Sachero, here's your art versus mainstream war game now, and all like that. And I said, in my opinion, there's no comparison. This is more attractive. And well, I will say that this is nice and clean and simple, and the units do stand out and all like that. But there's too much detail here that's missing for me. Like, I don't even know if the airbase is there in Foggia. Foggia was the keystone of the whole Italian campaign and all like that.
Foggia's not even on the unconditional surrender map.
Right. So, and there'll be some other things that you'll see in a minute, like and all like that. But that's a matter of taste, and all we can do is do the best work we're capable of. I will say, working with Sachero, he's very hard and he's pretty fast and all like that. But his main language is Japanese, and when I tell him stuff like, well, I need a zigzag line for the Gothic line or something like that, it's like, a little difficult for him to understand what I'm looking for. And I told the people at Compass, because they're going to try and use him for more projects, I said, you really got to tell him, give him an idea of what you want, and he can execute it, better than what you think it can be, and all like that. But when I say graphics are important, this is an example of when the designer and the graphic artist work together at the same time. And well, I just recently told them I want to add, I think I wanted to add an airbase. I don't remember whether I had an airbase added in Sicily, and I had a beach added, and all like that. And I do that based on reading. I say, well, I've got some beaches, but here's another beach they're mentioning. Is it important to include that beach as an option? And if I decide yes, and all like that, we put it in. We do have a lot of beach options. I assume that all this clear terrain is invadable, even though Allied air power would not be able to reach a lot of these places until they capture Foggia and all like that. He said, oh, the main reason why they invaded Sicily and the main reason why they invaded Salerno and then Anthea was because air cover could reach there first from Tunisia and then from Sicily and all. So, you know, and my air system is fairly simple. I don't know if it's quite as simple as Salvastus, but it does take into account that you can't place the air anywhere. Anyhow, let's go to the next slide and see what we get. I don't know. Okay,
right.
that's Desert World. We don't need to go through this. It's a promotional thing. Hopefully, you'll be able to find this online, either at Compass or at Gary's website or at mine. This is really just to say, do you like these graphics? And do you like the idea of a simple, fast playing game and all like that that has some verisimilitude? Oh wait, I did that. I shouldn't have done that. Hold on.
It's all good, folks. If you want to read, if we move too fast, you can pause to read the slides if you're watching.
Okay, so let's go on to the next slide.
We have the Army Organizer.
Okay. First of all, I should say, from Salerno to Rome is the game that influenced me to do this way, like it all like that. I don't like having too many counters on the map. I've already said that, and all. These counters here, this is Africa Corps. These are the German counters that can be on the map and move. And these are the Allied counters. So you can see there's about a dozen. And some of them are special, like, well, there's air and naval, but there's also like, I can't read it myself. Oh, there's also like long range desert group and German conf group and all like that and all. But this is simply a way of tracking step reduction and unit types. These are markers. These are boxes. The markers go in boxes. So for instance, if it's just too small to read, but I guess this is the Africa Corps at the top.
Yes.
If Africa Corps has 2 infantry and 2 armor divisions in it, you would take an armor thing and an infantry thing and put them in the boxes here and all like that. Replacements work. You can bring back the strength like and all like that with operation points like and all like that. There are die roll modifiers involved for having different unit types involved in the same battle. There are restrictions about combining different unit nationalities like and all. The leaders are HQ and supply, which we'll talk about in a minute because I want to talk about the supply and all like that. For the most part, this is just like having 4 steps in a unit that you would move on the map. But it is at a higher scale. It's saying you're operating with corps and an army group, and the divisions are becoming subordinate points or steps within the units, like and all like that. Sergio does the same thing. He was using it a little bit more as a physical, of actually taking physical divisions and putting them on these charts under the correct leadership. and then you would just put the leader or the headquarters on the map.
Mm-hmm.
That works fine, like like that. But then you still have the possibility of having larger numbers of units on the map. If you know history and you play correctly, you probably won't run into that problem too much. But again, that has to do with the map scale. If the map scale has a lot of hexes, you're going to have to break down a lot of units to create the line that you want to defend with zones of control and whatnot, like that. Air and naval is abstracted. It's pretty simple. It adds combat value, or it can be used to attack supply and stuff like that. It's obviously it has ranges and zones where they can go and zones where they can't go. The leaders are the most important here, because, and this gets into the supply. The leaders represent command, supply, and I think, initiative. I say I roll together initiative, activation, command, control, and supply into a headquarters unit. And the headquarters unit is allocated supply points. And the headquarters unit then can use the subordinate units in that formation, like that, to expend points that are allocated to the headquarters to conduct a range of different activities and operations and all like that. The key difference between this and Salvesta and Sergio is, like the number of units and the number of locations, the number of operation points is very small. Usually it's less than 10 and all like that. So if you're going to you can do, like Salvasta's game, you can do continuing assaults, expending supply points. The same unit can attack units in the same zone. Let's say it's near Monte Cassino and all like that. They can do it as much as they want, but it's going to cost them supply points. And eventually, not only are they going to run out of supply points, but they're going to be in a disadvantageous position when the enemy's impulse comes. But the key thing is they're small numbers. You might do 2 or 3 operations per impulse and all. And there's only, in terms of fighting formations, you might have 7 on the board, and you might be doing 2 or 3 operations and all. All of that does gel with the history on this scale. There's one more point about the operations point. I don't know if I have a slide that makes it clear. But do you have any questions about this? Because this is an important part of the game, as is the map.
Not so far. I mean, we're not done here. So let's continue to talk. I mean, you've raised, I think, a number of design challenges that have historically bedeviled wargame designers, right, and players, to the extent that players recognize those as issues. I'm very curious to see how you are tackling those challenges, and the operations points mechanism seems like a good way forward. So let's talk some more. Next slide.
Yep. Okay, so this is not a really important slide. Again, it's marketing. This is what I talked about at the beginning, that Bill Thomas said, I want to put 2 games in one box. The series is called the Double Time History Designs, and the packs, this would be one package or one box, one shipping cost, and it's 2 complete games. I should talk briefly about the fact that the architecture of all the games is the same. I wouldn't even go so far as to say there's series rules and special rules. It's not going to be done that way in 2 separate books. Every book will have the same series rules, and then it will have some special rules, and all like that. And the special rules will talk about stuff like different new terrain features, like all like that. There are or different events tables or different scenario situation restrictions or something like that and all. But it's exactly the same game system applied from the Civil War to the Pacific.
Okay.
Which is also another trick if I can pull it off and all like that. And remember, the reason why that's possible, it's not because I'm a genius. It's because I'm saying I'm eliminating everything that's slowing down play and all like that. So there's going to be some strategic challenges in the Pacific and all like that, and that's what I'm going to focus on. It gets really interesting in the difference between a campaign level game like Solomon's Campaign and a theater level game like Divine Wind and all like that. But I just wanted, this just shows how they're going to be bundled together. Let's go to the next slide.
All right. So here we have war across Europe in the West and the East.
Yeah, these are both going to be in the same box, but they're two separate games. Right now, I don't have a bridge for them. I can make it, but I'm trying to avoid the idea of getting toward a monster game. I don't want to have, another map and all like that. I would rather just deal with transfers between them, and all like that. But I'm sure there'll be pressure on me to make some kind of link or some kind of expansion that could link these two games. To me, as much as I said I want to see the whole campaign, to me these campaigns are big enough and rich enough for themselves that they don't necessarily need to be linked together. And if they are linked together, I'm afraid the player is bordering on that megalomania that I'm trying to.
Well, that's on the player, isn't it? If they decide they would like to play the two games together.
Well, they always do.
I understand the instinct.
It is important to make them relate in terms of forces. Very important, that when formations have to be transferred between fronts and stuff like that. Anyhow, the main thing here is the similarity of the design. It's always all exactly the same, like that. And the terrain is different, all like that. And there's some nuance between what's going on in the Russian front and what's going on in other fronts, all like that. For instance, the Desert War one is the most supply driven and all like that. But they're all very supply driven and all. This is going to be probably published in probably late 27. The Desert War Mountain one is probably late 26 and all like that. The Desert War has been play tested a lot already, and the rules are written. The Mountain War one is just getting into play testing now. Let's go into the next one. Okay, this is the campaign level Pacific game and all. We should go right into the SPI version, which is the next slide.
All right, here we go.
Okay, so this is the game from 1973, I believe. Irad Hardy is developer and Jim Dunnigan is designer. When I say this game is influential, very few people really know too much about it. Look at the number of hexes in this game and all like that. It's one of the only games of the era, that said, let's design a war game with less than 20 locations and all like that. And the cool thing about this is by using fewer locations, it produces the possibility of having hidden, non-written movement and all like that. And I've already demonstrated how I'm doing that in Divine Wind. What I'm saying is it's really, really easy to have hidden movement in a game that has far fewer units and far fewer locations, which is what the Pacific War was about, all like that. Just a couple of quick things. a lot of naval games used to say, "Oh, well, you just worry about the ships, and the ships can go to any zone they want." There was no higher level organization and all like that. Well, we know that's not the way the navies operate. We
Right.
always have concentration of force. Everything is always moved as a fleet. There's some destroyers that operate independently, but that was totally missed by war game designers for a number of years and all like that. Um, Finally, we started getting task forces and all like that. But when I compare this game to something like Mark Herman's Pacific War, and of course, his is a strategic game about the whole war, and this is
Mm-hmm.
just about the Solomon's campaign. But what I'm saying is, Donegan understood this idea that if you're going to bring intelligence into the game, you want to have fewer locations. And I compared this in something I think I wrote to you. The reason why hidden information became a nasty word was because Bismarck in those games used to have so many squares that you had to search through that it was
Mm-hmm.
just like playing bingo and calling out numbers and all like that. It was not a tense, excited game. It was just like find the needle in the haystack kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jeremy White tried to like make that more manageable by putting those blocks on the game, and you're really just trying to figure out where along the trajectory you are and all like that. But Dunnigan basically outflanks them with this idea, like and all like that. Make the game small, but add some stuff that gives it depth and flavor for that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wanted to say something more. Um, so, for instance, in Divine Wind, like like that, there are what I call campaign zones. That's the whole Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
and I demonstrated this at Compass, and I think you were there. The way you do simultaneous movement is you have chits, and the chits just say, this fleet is going to like the Solomon, or this
Mm-hmm.
fleet is going to like um, um, the Philippines.
Wherever, right.
And well, but there are only 8 choices,
Mm-hmm.
and there are only a few fleets. And the result is you get a strategic Pacific game that's very playable, has hidden information, and it's not based on random events. It's under player control. Because random events, I don't like games also where events occur that are not under player, some degree of player control, which is why I don't like card games, what I call fanciful games, and all like that. But what I'm saying is here you have pre-plotted movement to one of the map locations, and it's just done by choosing a chip and all like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm really, really going in a whole different direction from the mainstream war game thing. But Donegan knew this in 1973 and all like that. And the lesson was not lost on me. And remember, with Scrimmage, I pointed out only 11 units. Here, I
Mm-hmm.
point out like that there's less than 20 locations.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to like my game in the Pacific, there are eight there are 8 strategic locations, and each of those are made up of 3 more operational locations.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a total of 24. There's 24 locations, but you have to pick a higher level location first, and
Mm-hmm.
that simplifies and speeds the whole movement system and all like that. I don't know if I'm making it clear. We're talking about some uh, quirky design ideas now, and it's hard for me to demonstrate and make all this clear. But I've tried to make it simple enough that people can understand how I embarked on the designs that I've done.
Well,
And
Frank, that's just an opportunity for us to revisit the topic when we have a game that's a little closer to release, too. So that's all right.
okay, yeah, this is an overview. I'm hoping I have a slide here that's going to allow me to discuss the operations point
Just
a little bit more fully. If not, I have to do it without a slide, like that. Um, okay, so this is the campaign level Pacific game. This is the remake of the 1973 Solomon campaign game, and all like that. In this game, there's even fewer locations. There are locations. Um, this is Santa Cruz Islands. There's Eastern Solomons. There's Coral Sea, and there's the slot. Those are the strategic choices that you're saying the Japanese Second Fleet is going to operate in on that turn. On an operational level, you'll be moving inside that thing. You'll be moving inside that campaign zone, and it can be hidden again because, again, it's just an ABC choice kind of thing within that. And well, down here, there's a tactical display for surface engagements and all like that. These are again the units, the fleets, and the air base. These represent the air units at these bases and all like that. This is my favorite design of all the ones I'm working on, and all because this one I feel I've gone further about simplifying the problems of the Pacific War than anyone else has done, and all like that. The higher level one, Divine Wind, is still a little bit overly complicated in my opinion, and all like that. But basically, like and all like that. This is all about hidden movement and intelligence, and I can make these games. Let me for a minute go back to the Italian War.
Okay.
What I realized when I was doing the tables on the Italian War, on the Italian front game, no, the tables, the one.
I went back too far.
Okay.
This one?
Yeah, let's try this one. What I realized was, and I want to give a shout out here. John Butterfield gave a wonderful interview with you a while ago about solitaire design. John Butterfield is some kind of like extraordinary genius. He's definitely, there's like 10 designers who I feel are hugely valuable and all like that. And Butterfield is in the top 5 and all like that and all. And he also gave a very good explanation of his journey about designing. I believe it was RAF, and he said a couple of things that I still remember. He said, it was about enemy action or death. He said, I decided just off the top of my head that I would make a solitaire game where the Germans could be the solitaire side, the Allies could be the solitaire side, and there would be a 2-player game. And then he said, he paused, and then he said, it was a really bad idea. And he said, it took me 5 years. And like that. But what he also said there was when he talked about Omaha Beach, I think it was Omaha Beach, he said, what I realized was that the Germans don't really do that much. They have these fields of fire that are pre designed, like like that. And unlike the Herman Luttman game where Wellington's forces move out of these beautiful defensive positions, like that, he said that what he concentrated on was the idea of where the Germans could fire into and stuff like that, because there wasn't going to be a player directing those choices, like like that. Well, similarly here, I was designing this as a 2-player game, and I got to the point where I said, you remember Fleet Admiral Nimitz and stuff like that, and all. One of the questions is, well, first of all, let's look at the Italians, or let's look at the Germans and the Italians. The strategy for both the Germans and the Italians in this campaign is to be on the defensive and to withdraw judiciously and counterattack judiciously.
Mm-hmm.
So right away, when you understand that strategy, you say, "Hey, it's really not that hard to figure out how to make solitaire um, not a flow chart, but a way of saying
Yeah.
these are the priorities." So then I created what I called the retreat table for the axis. And
Mm-hmm.
what I also realized, so on the retreat table, this is for the two-player game.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's also enforced against players who are actually playing the Germans. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also be used to manage the Germans in a solitaire game, and it's not all completely fleshed out. But the point is, like most games, one of the priorities might be to retreat to an air base or a port if it's the next place, if it's adjacent or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then it will have a scale: airbase, port, city, mountain, so again.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I realized also is they had this idea of these prepared defense lines. So, so the point is that the Germans are going to retreat into the positions along one of these defense lines, the closest one
Mm-hmm.
at all, unless you're playing some kind of free thing where you can say, no, we're not going to defend the South at all, which
Mm-hmm.
and all. But so what I'm saying is, it's not that hard. Um, Also, like because combat requires the expenditure of operation points, and operation points are limited. It's not that hard to make a solitaire bot that can control those decisions and all
Mm-hmm.
like that. And remember, combat happens in the same zone
Mm-hmm.
and all like that. And I'm not sure whether it's mandatory, but it can be continuous. I said you can. So that one of the decisions are you attack, get a result, and all like that. You want to attack again, and somehow, based on the situation, the game should be able to figure out, does it make sense to attack again? Now, it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be a perfect thing because they're not going to know exactly necessarily what the enemy. This is a good place to bring in the operation points. There's an enemy strength which is hidden because it's really on the army organizer cards. You see the HQ units, but you don't know what's in them. Okay, so that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you attack, it's a simple combat ratio. No, go back to the other one. Go back to the one you were just learning. It's a simple combat ratio. Now, I should point this out. Again, when I'm listening to myself, I really sound like a crazy person. This one row here is the combat results table.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the combat scale. And
Mm-hmm.
and it has it's an odd-based system with a die roll modifier, but it has very few variations in results and very few levels of superiority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you didn't really get attacks that were 18-1 and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Superiority simply means better than 1-1 and all like
Mm-hmm.
that. Inferiority means less than 1-1 and all like that. So that's a straightforward thing, but there are die roll modifiers based on nationality, terrain, and other factors like that. But the key thing here is the operation points. First of all, doing any combat requires on the attack some expenditure of operation points.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do continuous attacks and concentrated attacks by expending more operation points
Hmm.
and all like that. And that's what I'm saying. The player, even if he has a guess of how much strength you have because he attacked you there before, he doesn't really know how much supply you have there. And the
Mm-hmm.
supply or the operation points are as important in terms of your ability to withstand attack the operation points are as important, and that's not known to the other player, and it's also not known. If it was a bot, it would be decided by something like a die roll, but it's not known how much the player is going to gamble
Mm-hmm.
in terms of operation points to either attack or continue to attack and all like that. But the other thing, The last thing is that the, the operation points can also be traded for losses and all like that. You can
Hmm.
say, we're going to expend more supplies to hold this position and we're not going to retreat. And I've seen that in other games, but in this game, it's 100%. You can either lose position, lose strength, or lose supply and all. So even though it's only one row of results, it's really a pretty versatile um, combat system, and I'm still tweaking it, like and all like that. But it allows for the problem I had about the problem I had about the bulge. Now the defender is faced with this idea of um, I cannot lose. You just switched me to myself. Did you lose me, Gary? I think you lost me. Hmm.
I got you now.
Back.
Yeah.
Just to finish my thought, like in all, the
Yeah.
defender can um, he doesn't know to what degree the attacker can maintain the combat and all like that, and he doesn't know, like in all, if it's wiser to give up ground or wiser to hold ground, like in
Mm-hmm.
all. But and this is something that's very much in Salerno, from Salerno to Rome. And although his is not as um, destructive, his is not as dangerous as mine.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, like you know, like that, um, it produces an entirely different feeling in the sense that yeah, you have operation points, you can expend the wall, you can try and push the enemy back, you can try and eliminate the enemy and all. But if you're leaving no reserves and you're leaving yourself unsupplied, you're not really going to accomplish very much that way. So it's always a matter of balancing the um, the level of supply that you feel you can. And it can't be managed perfectly, like and all like that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the results that are variables in these tables can affect the number of operation points that you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have that turn. But
Mm-hmm.
remember, overall, it's a small number.
Mm-hmm.
But so Monte Cassino, if it's supplied and it's got tremendous um, die roll modifiers and all like that because it's got a fort, it's got mountains, it's got rivers, and it's got I think there's one oh, and it's got the I guess it's the Gothic line.
Mm-hmm.
That's four die roll modifiers and all like that and all. So what I'm saying is you could very easily blow all your supply for the whole turn attacking Monte Cassino
Mm-hmm.
and not budging it and all like that. So that gave me an opportunity to talk a little about operation points and how important they are and
Mm-hmm.
how they really are the engine and the main way that it's different from unconditional surrender and Salerno is that there's only a small number of points. The maximum either player can have is 20, but that's highly unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I forgot to tell you one more thing about operation points. But it's only a small number, and there's only a small number of formations. So the whole thing is manageable. When the Germans get reinforcements, let's just take that as an example. They're just moving the markers on the army organizers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not crowding up the board and
Mm-hmm.
all like that. So it's hidden, and it's like economical in terms of like clutter and consumption of time, moving things and all like that. But there
Mm-hmm.
was one more thing about operation points that are important. I mentioned this at the beginning. They're local. You assign them to a given headquarters, and the headquarters can only assign them to the subordinate units or the headquarters itself, and
Mm-hmm.
all like that. That part I described earlier. Another main difference from a lot of war games, and I don't understand why the other games don't do this, and all like that. The bank of supply point, a bank of operation points, is based on the objectives you hold, air bases and ports.
Mm-hmm.
And the Allies have like basically one turn of floating supply,
Mm-hmm.
It's based on they're taking key objectives. And if they don't take those objectives, they're going to lose. They're not going
Mm-hmm.
to have any operation points and all like that. That's what I mean. So in two ways, the operation points are local. They're local. You're not just tracing a supply line back to a port. You're taking supply points abstract from the port and assigning them to one of your command structures and all.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also local in terms of where you get them. You don't get them by rolling a die. Again, player agency. You don't get
Mm-hmm.
them by rolling a die or picking a card, or even a table or something like that. And all you have to obtain them. Remember, this whole game is 8 turns. You have to because each turn is a season. You have to, like Sicily, you have to take within 2 turns. There's only
Mm-hmm.
three. There's only 3 zones,
Mm-hmm.
but like all like that, there's the possibility of continuous attack and all like that. So theoretically, you could take it in 1 turn, like in 1939 in Poland. Although
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been able to do that in unconditional surrender. But and the next scenario is another 3 turns. That first scenario is 2 turns. It's a good learning scenario. Next scenario is 3 turns to
Mm-hmm.
take it to Rome, I think. And the last scenario is 3 turns. So you have very limited resources with very clear objectives and it's like, it's a machine in the sense that if you don't capture the objective that you need each turn, you're not going to be successful. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to, and this is true of most war games, only because it's slightly more abstracted. There might be victory points you get. Here,
Mm-hmm.
there's a wherewithal because I should talk a little about the difference between the Germans and the Allies. But the Allies need those ports to be able to bring ashore the ammunition and the petrol and the reinforcements and everything that the
Mm-hmm.
operations represent and all like that. And like the old D-Day, like all like that, or actually like in my Western Front game, it's absolutely essential that you take Cherbourg, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, like that, because of what I've tried to explain in the
Mm-hmm.
last minutes. So that was what I wanted to say about operation points and about the engine and how I managed to keep that playable by reducing the number of objectives and the number of units and the number of actual points
Mm-hmm.
that drive the system. And once again, I figured this out by looking at games like Unconditional Surrender and saying, this is becoming unplayable. How can I fix this? And all like that. Now I might not have come up with the perfect solution, but it's something that made me feel that I was on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so now let's go toward the end. I think we're near the end anyhow. So let's go down a few slides to about.
I
Okay,
think we left off. This is the
go back
first one
to
we haven't seen yet.
go back to. Okay,
This one.
Louise Solomon's campaign. Yeah, that's where we were. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really have too much more to say about this. Um, um, in this game and all like that, operation points they have slightly different characteristics, but I can't explain that right now. But let's go to the last slide, or
Mm-hmm.
near the last slide. Okay, so this is an example of the whole. This is just
Mm-hmm.
a graphic of the whole series. The Chair on the Connie, this guy, he's designing all the graphics, including the counters, which you can see. You can see some of the counters on the
Mm-hmm.
Desert War map here, all the boxes and everything like that, and the rule books, like and
Mm-hmm.
all like that. And I he hasn't been to the United States. I told Bill about him, and I told um, Julian about him, and they said that they were giving him work. They had, this is a typical thing that happens in the game world, which maybe you could explain. So I told them, and they said, "Wow, this artwork is tremendous." Like and all, I said, "This guy is not. No one else knows about him. I'm the only one who knows about him." And all, this guy is trying to break into the hobby and get more experience, like and all, because he loves doing military art, like and
Mm-hmm.
all, like that and all. So I said, would you be interested? I said, it's important to me I'm trying, as well as I'm trying to promote this series of games, I'm trying to promote Sachiro as an important asset in our community. So they said, yes, based on what you're showing us, we definitely want to bring him in and make him an in-house freelance designer, not in-house freelance. So I said, great. I said, I'm so happy you like his work because I like his work and I think it's had a big effect on my design and all like that. And so I called Julian about 2 weeks later and all like that. Well, first I wrote to Sachiro and I said, have they given you an assignment yet? And he said, no, but they called me and they told me they're going to. So then another week went by, like and all like that, and I didn't hear anything. I wrote to Sachiro. I haven't phoned him. He doesn't speak English. He writes English, but he doesn't speak English, and all like that. Um, so I wrote to him again, and he said, yes, they gave me an assignment. And I said,
Excellent.
what is it? The French and Indian War.
Huh.
I'm saying like that's the way the war game industry works.
Okay, that's a little bit random.
Yes,
That's what Julian rolled that on the random events table.
He knew nothing about that conflict and all, but he was beginning to study it. The last I heard is like that they withdrew it. They were having some problems with the system and they weren't ready to go to final order or something like that. And well, so they're looking for another project for him. So if you have your Austerlitz game, your 1809 campaign game in the pipeline, he might be available to work on that for you.
It's a ways away.
Are we at the final slide now? I do want to show you one more slide from the gallery. This is the final slide I was going to do. I'll have one more slide, and then you and I can just talk if we have anything. Could you go down to the slide that shows the counter mix for Desert War? It's probably just keep going fast. Keep going. Oh wait, you can stop. Okay, this is the one I meant. Yeah, this is the one I meant. Although you can't really see it because it's not blown up enough. But the counters I mentioned before when we talked about the Army organizers, there's the units that go on the map, which are basically headquarters, corps, and army and army group, and all like that. And then there's the markers that record the strengths within those command formations. These are the markers, I believe, on top. And I had showed you on the Army Organizer, there were different markers for mountains and the airborne and stuff like that, and all like that. But so this is what the counters will look like. They'll be 5/8" pre-rounded. Incidentally, the game boards are all mounted. They're 17 by 22, which is not as big as a typical SPI map. And if you go back one slide, we can show you another component. Okay, this is an initial setup card. Great thing about setup is there's a few units and there's few locations. So I could just say these set up in I have trouble seeing it. Cairo, Alexandria, and all like that. And then this. No, these are the units, and this is the location they set up. So this is telling you the 5th Army and the 10th Army headquarters are there, and in the 10th Army there are 2 infantry divisions, 1 armor division, and 1 mountain. I think it's mountain, and all like that. So setup time, and this is a slightly older version. There's a different row of setup for each scenario. So there's one setup card, and it has both of the allies and the Axis, and there's a separate row for each scenario. But a scenario setup looks like this. This is separated out. This is the reinforcements for Desert War, but we put them on a different card now, and all like that. And again, it's just the game turn, and it's just telling you basically. I guess it's saying that they're entering in Cairo or Tripoli and all like that. And then those are the units and all like that. Those are the divisions and all like that. And incidentally, I should have said when a marker representing a division is moved down a slot on the Army Organizer, I don't necessarily consider that the division is eliminated. I consider it's degraded.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be, by paying an operation point, it can be replaced back up. Obviously, armor costs 2 replacement points, 2 operation points to
Mm-hmm.
bring back the strength. And also, they have to be in certain locations to do that, and all like that. Everything is kept very low number, ones and
Mm-hmm.
twos and stuff like that. And I think that's a pretty good first dive into the pool. And
Okay.
um,
Well,
anything on your mind?
I'm excited about how you're going to tackle these design challenges, and I think that you've outlined here today a number of interesting ideas toward that goal. I want to see the games, when they're ready to show off some actual pieces, and we could start doing pushing some pieces around.
Okay, that will
The
probably
sooner
be,
the better.
yeah, that will probably be around May,
Hmm.
because I'm going to be bringing it to Compass Expo.
Excellent.
I think I'll probably bring both games to Compass Expo. I'm excited about this, and I'm excited for the simplest reason. These games are not they're not slow. They're not, to me, they have the right number of moving pieces. They have the right amount of historicity, or whatever you call that flavor,
Hmm.
that everyone's saying. And we should have said, when I said, why don't people play shuffleboard? We should have said that there's this overarching question. Um, why do people find certain topics interesting and other topics not, and all like that? Um, Most game designers, you can tell just by their output, they find all these battles and military campaigns pretty interesting and all like
Hmm.
that. I guess the answer is, if you don't know much about it, you don't know whether you like it or not, and
That's
all
true.
like and all. But I do wonder, since my position is wargamers don't really care about history, so I'm left with this question: why do they buy war games? What if they don't want to read about it, and it's not important to them that it's be um, realistic in the sense of like putting yourself more in the position of the real commanders, with all the constraints that would involve and all like that. And well, if they're not interested in that, then what exactly are they pursuing when they say, "Oh, I want a game on the Battle of the Bulge"? Is it strictly a competitive matchup? And like I said, why not play horseshoes then?
Or
I'm
shuffleboard.
just saying I don't understand that, and I've asked people all my life, explain to me, because I just want to say I've asked a lot of really cool, knowledgeable people about some of these questions, and I've got these weird answers, like either it's just a game, or um, you can't really do everything historical, or I don't care. It's a good game, so I don't care about the history at all. So none of those answers are satisfying to me, but they must be satisfying to a lot of people and all like that. To me, like I said, I'm more interested in military history than ever, even though I've been studying it for 60 something years, like and all like that. I'm more interested in game design than ever, because I see that there are ways to uh, make them less burdensome and all like that.
Hmm.
And I also really believe that um, people should play games more. They shouldn't necessarily collect them and talk about them and all like that. They
Can't
should
argue
play
with
them, and
that.
if they're not going to play them, they should talk about what they like and dislike. They should explore more deeply why certain features or rules bother them, because that will help the designer know not to make the same mistake again. or something.
Hmm.
As I've said many times, I have close to 400 games. They're all super valuable. Some of them are valuable because they give me a good overview of the situation. Some of them are valuable because they have some kind of um, um, brilliant little features or mechanics that I hadn't thought of. And most of them are really valuable because I look at them and I say, nope, that game takes too long, or
Hmm.
no, this is much more complicated than I think it needs to be. I couldn't deal with this. I'm in the
Hmm.
Lou Ritter. I'm in the Lou Ritter group. Like, if it takes more than 10 minutes to set up, I'm out. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to appear with you, and we're getting near the closing, you are very much on the other side of the fence. You love a game that you would take all week to
Hmm.
play, like that.
Yep.
So why don't we just hear in closing your remarks about what is so great when you have a game like that takes that long to play?
Well, that's a great question. I'm gonna answer your other point first, actually, because
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of people who have an interest in history, but consciously avoid war games. And maybe they're not as interested in history or as knowledgeable or whatever as your average war gamer or whatever. Those are probably all true, but that stay away from war games because their impression is they're very complicated and they take forever to play. To the extent that that's true, I think those things are somewhat overstated, but there are absolutely billions of examples of giant games that take anywhere from 20 to 500 hours to play, right? Because I have most of them. um I think there's in the context of playing a large game, there's a couple different ways you can approach that. There's people that play by email. There's people that like get together at a convention and just play intensely, like me, for 15 hours a day for a week. um I think one of the cool things about that as an experience is that you kind of get to see, you're given the game system, right, which the details of which are not relevant to the point. You're given the game system, you're given this map, you're given these pieces that represent units or military assets that to some extent, to the limits of the designer and the publisher's capabilities, reflect the units that were actually present there, right? They reflect the playing pieces that the historical commanders at some level had available to them. And as one plays that long experience, you have this, you get to kind of see the situation evolve kind of in slow motion, to be completely honest, turn by turn, right? And it gives you a lot of time to perform a lot of that analysis of, hey, what am I going to do next? What do I think the other fellow's going to do? I frankly have more. We're all cognizant of the fact that we have more information at our fingertips than the historical commanders. But to be honest about it, I think a lot of it is what you called it earlier in this conversation. What is really yeah, they like history, but they also really like that geometry puzzle, right? And maybe there's a competitive element in it, and maybe it is merely just a kind of a joy in exploring these complicated and detailed mechanics and seeing it slowly evolve over the course of your 100 hours or whatever you're sinking into this thing. Right. That's my take on it anyway. I'd love to hear what other monster war gamers feel about it, and what appeals to them about monster war games, and maybe we'll get a show out of that. If not, leave some your position in the comments.
I agree with you based on what I've talked to a lot of players. A lot of players, I mentioned a few minutes ago that some players say, I don't care about the history, it's a good game. A lot of players have communicated to me that they like that math geometry puzzle. Like I'm not putting it down, but it's like a pencil sketch game where you have to go through to the end, like that.
Yeah.
They like the problem solving. They don't seem to care how long it takes. They don't seem to care whether it's really reflective of history. They like being challenged like a Rubik's cube, although that might be an unflattering way of putting it. But um, they like the challenge, and they like this particular challenge because it is slow, detailed, numerically based, counting exercise, all the things
Quantitative.
all the things that I said I'm trying to get away from, and well, and that's why I realized nothing that I'm doing is going to change anyone's mind. Like, if that's what you like, then buy big war games and all like that. All I'm saying, and it's very important, this is where I started. When you get to be my age, and if you talk to older players, like, all like that, I find this more and more. Even Mark Herman will say something like this, and well, that the time is rubs them a little bit more than it used to when they were younger, like, and that um, um, they don't have as much patience. When I was younger, I tended to think that old people were just old and crabby and like um, didn't like things because they weren't the way they were 40 years
Hmm.
ago or something like that. What I've learned is a couple of things that's scary. One is, for me, getting old is getting tired more quickly, and I don't like that. But that is one of the reasons why I'm trying to produce quicker games, like, all like that. The second thing is what I said about, you do gain perspective, and you do become more of an authority, particularly if you work in a field for 50 years or something like that. Your opinion is more informed. Your opinion is more informed, like, all like that. Um, it's 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 not necessarily that one game is better than the other, but what the older person has is an understanding of the importance of the time that he's investing in it,
Hmm.
and he has real worries and concerns about
Right.
whether it's worth it.
Am I
And the
going to
third
drop dead before war in Europe has reached its conclusion?
And the third thing is, and we all are in the same boat here. Um, I mentioned that when you get to be almost 80 years old, you can't help it when you say, "Oh, that person seems a little too juvenile to me," like, like that. We all pretty much got into this field, or many of us did, when we were real youngsters, like, like that. And it was something that appealed to juveniles. The Avon Hill thing was 14-year-old boys was the main target audience. And when you're 75, you're not going to be as excited about what the same kind of game that when you were 14, like, all like that. And so the bottom line of what I'm saying is exactly what Dunnigan said. Different strokes for different folks. We need we need games for uh, we just need games that do different things well. And if you find a big monster game and you think it's doing what it's doing well, and every minute of time spent there is like well spent, like, then God bless the designer and God bless you, like, like that. Um, I'm really sincere about that. If that game is really um, doing like what I feel when I read a good history book,
Hmm.
now I'm really understanding what the hell went wrong, or how stupid they were that I didn't know they were that stupid. Although we might have it going in Venezuela soon and all like that. What I'm saying is, and we might have the Trump class battleships soon and all. But what I'm saying is, um, I get really, really excited. It's the same thing. Some people say, well, I read a good book and then I want to play a game
Hmm.
about it. Some people say I play a game and then I read a good book about it. In both of those cases, something important, something successful is happening.
Yes.
But if you're only going to play a game once in a blue moon and you're just going to collect games and just talk about them in a sort of illegible way, and all like that, um, you should hold yourself to account. You
Hmm.
should you should say it's okay if I don't play that many games, but the games I play, I want to be able to discuss intelligently. I want to be able
Hmm.
to tell other people what I like about them. I want to be able to figure out you know, the way things used to be in the Avalon Hill General days. Sometimes people would say, "Oh, this is a better way of doing that rule," and all like that. I think that the collecting and the kibitzing is actually, um, I don't think we're making as much progress as I hoped, and that's one of the reasons why I've always been a thorn in your side. I I I have to be honest with you. I don't
Frank,
find
you're
it.
welcome to give me a hard time whenever you want.
I don't find um, these show lists where they say like, oh well, this game, these are the 10 games that deal with this, like and all like that. I don't find that endlessly fascinating. I'm really glad that you have 200 or more loyal people who tune in every week, like and all like that. But for me, what's really helpful, and when I met you in the elevator, I said, this is the guy I've been wanting to meet. This is the guy who knows everything about the history of war games. This is the guy who can tell me scrimmage led to sniper or something like that. To know those links, to understand the history of our hobby, and not just the history of the hobby in a commercial sense and all like that, but the history of the design, of war game design. How different things that were done many, many years ago are either still with us, and that could be a positive or a negative, and also how they affect other games that we have to rush out and buy now, and all like that. There's a chain of DNA, and we all can trace it back to Charles Roberts and Jim Dunnigan, and all like that. And I'm very thankful for those two men for doing things differently and for questioning the status quo and all like that. And so far I haven't seen another person like Dunnigan. I wish Dunnigan was more visible in the hobby, but apparently he's older than me.
Yeah.
And so is Al Nofi and all like that. And I do hope like all like that a lot of good game designers are around for a long time. I don't think I'm necessarily going to be around for much longer. So I've got to do my short, shitty games quick.
Tell us what you have to say before it's too late.
Right.
And Frank, I might not be quite at the same waypoint on this journey as you are, but I too, in recent years, have begun at least to recognize that the most valuable asset we have as people, not just as wargamers, but in the context of wargaming, is the time, right? Is the you never have as much time. The problem is not a shortage of games. There's plenty. The problem is a shortage of the time and the other variables that are hard to get these things organized. And when we get them organized, maybe we should have a higher priority on creating a really enriching experience or good experience in the minimum amount of hours that we can. So that's the reason why I am very much looking forward to seeing what you've got in store for us as these games begin to come out. So
and I'm looking forward to what's behind the door behind you.
That's just the game
you've
room.
been promising that there's going to be more actual hands-on game content coming up. And like I said, I still believe you. I still believe you're the guy we have to meet.
Well, it's now 2026, so it's time for me to actually start making that happen.
Okay, and I hope you enjoy your conference coming up, your convention coming up. You're going to have a big war game to play then, like you are. And I want to just thank everyone for listening, and thank you especially for being a great, not collaboration. The word I want is something like coagulation. You're like a blood clot for war games.
The great coagulator of war games. Exactly. I'll have to see if I can market that, but I'm thinking it might need to be workshopped just a little bit more.
Okay, and well, like that. Thank you, and I hope
Frank.
I hope we meet in an elevator again.
Absolutely, we absolutely will. All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.